It was a young, hearty crowd that showed up to celebrate New Year's Eve in Times Square. A steady rain and near-freezing temperatures left most wet, cold, and just a bit limp, waiting for 1974. The bad weather and the energy shortage was credited with keeping the crowd small, only about 50,000 as compared to 300,000 last year. Even the lights in the usually bright square had been dimmed, although you could always get a cheer under the television lights.
The Year of the Tiger began with a celebration. Led Zeppelin's tour manager and Peter Grant's right hand, Richard Cole, got married for the first time in the 70s on January 3rd. Page, Plant and Jones were in attendance. Cole's second wedding took place in 1978, next to Bad Company's own Simon Kirke, tying the knot at the same event. Sessions for Physical Graffiti were resumed at Headley Grange, with Robert Plant's vocals still recovering from surgery, and John Paul Jones's thoughts of leaving the band far behind him. If you haven't watched episode 1 of the series, I definitely recommend it for context. So no recording took place at Headley Grange until February, for a very good reason. I did my research and found Ronnie Lane's mobile unit was used for Rick Wakeman's Journey to the Center of the Earth concert on January 18th. Also in music news for January was the release of Rhapsody in White by Barry White's Love Unlimited Orchestra, an R&B soul masterpiece that became a must-play record in discotheques around the world. Roy Harper released his 7th studio album, Valentine, on February 14th, 1974. Track 2, Male Chauvinist Pig Blues, featured Jimmy Page on electric guitar, Ronnie Lane on bass, and Keith Moon on drums. All three musicians plus keyboardist Max Middleton of future Jeff Beck fame, Robert Plant, and John Bonham were invited to Harper's Valentine show at London's Rainbow Theatre, held on the same day, February 14th. Bonzo presented an award for fellow musician Keith Moon. Judging by the bottle, I can think of a category for that one. Now I find these photographs quite disturbing, knowing their lives would end in very similar ways less than 7 years away. Two drumming legends captured on stage in London. Yeah, that's Jimmy Page wearing the same coat from Led Zeppelin's March 1973 event at a gallery in Denmark. That's Led Zeppelin fandom for you. Two songs from this show were recorded and included on Harper's 1974 live album by the name of Flashes from the Archives of Oblivion. Streaming platforms featured the 1989 CD reissue track listing that left out two songs from the original vinyl pressing, Too Many Movies and Home. I managed to get a copy of this. Now my conclusion is that Jimmy Page played on both songs. John Bonham picked up an acoustic guitar midway through one of these numbers, but this guitar was not plugged in, so we cannot listen to what he played.
Anything for a laugh, innit? You know what I mean? Well, it's not very often. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy Harper.
February was also news for Grand Funk finally winning their long litigation and band rights case against manager Terry Knight. Yes played their first ever shows at Madison Square Garden for their Tale from Topographic Oceans tour. It was no more I Got You Babe for Cher, who filed for divorce from husband Sonny Bono. Brian Eno, Kiss, and Donna Summer released their respective debut albums. Deep Purple came back from the ashes with Burn. Tangerine Dream's fifth album, Phaedra, hit the stores, along Steely Dan's Pretzel Logic and Big Star's critically acclaimed Radio City.
Starts it off, if you remember, the whole boogie part starts off with Jesus making my dying bed. Now, just a minute though, Rob Burton's never the same length. Freedom, and then he doesn't matter what length Rob does, we still can do it. We can.
But where are you counting from now?
Well, you can't count from when you stop because your voice might be a different. I mean, your voice just might go half a beat. We're going to be fucked.
Ah, but if you do that, it'll be like Black Dog. Then it gives me room to move inside.
Yes, but the reason we did Black Dog is because we counted it and you did it afterwards.
Following the footsteps of When the Levee Breaks, Led Zeppelin transformed another old-school blues number into a discography highlight and their longest studio track at 11 minutes. Written by gospel blues singer Blind Willie Johnson in 1928, it employed various elements from local performers who sang the phrase, "Jesus going to make up your dying bed." Musicians Charlie Patton and Josh White recorded their own versions throughout the 30s and 40s. Led Zeppelin was not the first modern artist to cover this song, but Bob Dylan on his often overlooked debut album from 1962. This is a great record, and Dylan's take on In My Time of Dying is splendid. Robert Plant was certainly inspired by this vocal performance.
Well, in my time of dying, don't want nobody to mourn. All I want for you to do is take my body home.
Now, what about Led Zeppelin's guitar parts? Well, let me first shoot down the recurrent plagiarism critics. Jimmy's work here is original. Yes, it was inspired by gospel blues and hundreds of licks from the genre, but the riffs he came up with can be traced within Zeppelin's own catalog. We have the still unreleased at the time opening tuning motif of Jennings' Farm Blues, and the artisanal slide work of Hats Off to Roy Harper from Led Zeppelin 3. After Houses of the Holy having no real blues number, In My Time of Dying was just bound to happen. Like Kashmir, In My Time of Dying was recorded with an open guitar tuning, in this case, open A, which makes it easier for bar chords to be played with a slide. The song features guitar ideas found on another graffiti number, In the Ways of Sick Again, the open chord rhythm work from 1972's Black Country Woman, and a start-stop section from the 1973 versions of Dazed and Confused. With a complex musical structure and dynamically challenging sections, it's the band's finest moment on Physical Graffiti as a collective effort. Outside of some brief slide overdubs, it's really a live in the studio piece, with Robert's commanding blues voice, Jones' exquisite and insanely creative bass lines, Jimmy's architectural guitar, and John Bonham the mastermind behind it all, with a drumming showcase for the ages. Legend has it they didn't know how to end this tune. Thus, what we hear on the record is an epic jam session finale that culminates in a victorious feeling. Bonham can be heard coughing at the end of the track while saying, "That's gotta be the one, hasn't it?" Leaving this studio chatter bit at the end contributes to Graffiti's somewhat raw and unpolished sound into the personal universe of Led Zeppelin in the studio. In My Time of Dying was performed in open G tuning on the band's 1975 and 1977 tours, with Jimmy Page using a Danelectro guitar. The post-Led Zeppelin years saw Page revisit the song on his solo tour of 1988, the Coverdale Page shows in Japan in 1993, and the Black Crowes Project. It was performed by all Page, Plant, Jones, and Jason Bonham on Led Zeppelin's 2007 reunion. Led Zeppelin's second venture into funk after 1973's The Grunge, but this time with virtuoso Trampled Jones leading the way on his Honor D6 clavinet. While Jones has been quoted saying Stevie Wonder's Superstition was one of the main inspirations for this song, I spotted several tracks from the 1972 through 1973 period that contributed to the final result as well. Robert's vocal phrasing seems to be very much influenced by the Doobie Brothers' Long Train Running. Anyway, check them out. Now, Trampled Underfoot was also inspired by Zeppelin's own material on stage. The 1973 funk section of Dazed and Confused had them well connected on a solid groove. Hoda Love's Space Jam, with Jimmy working out the theremin, was the basis for one of the most underrated aspects of Trampled Underfoot, that being Page's use of tape echo to create an army of guitar embellishments throughout the song. The composition moves around a main riff plus an ascending chord sequence of B-flat 7, C7, plus E-flat and F added on the third repetition. Robert's lyrics are filled with innuendos regarding automobiles and pleasurable moments within a vehicle. It's a different take on Robert Johnson's 1936 Terraplane Blues that talks about a man who suspects his girlfriend is cheating, thus the metaphor of his car or lady not running. Trampled Underfoot was played at almost every show from 1975 until 1980. Robert Plant and Trampled Jones performed it on their respective solo tours. It was revisited on Led Zeppelin's 2000 reunion. The Wanton song. It's not about wonton soup, but the word wanton, which refers to a sexually unrestrained person. Judging by the lyrics, it has Robert describing a situation that maybe happened at the Continental Hyatt in 1973. Looking at the verses, it's clear this is an observation of human behavior, of temporary lovers, and romantic freedom, all while questioning the existence of love, if there's such a thing. Now onto the music. We find a Jimmy Page signature riff playing with octaves and John Bonham's guitar ears carefully following the notes. A similar idea can be found on 1970's Immigrant Song, plus once again, live 1973 versions of Dazed and Confused, where Jimmy would play an octave riff sequence. Now, the Wanton song features a very interesting bridge, with Trampled Jones on keyboards playing an exquisite set of chords: F minor 7, B diminished, C minor 7th, and G diminished, to then jump into a funk vibration of D minor 7, A minor, and G minor that we can hear Page playing at a 1973 soundcheck. Now this chord sequence is similar to Hot Chocolate's Brother Louie from 1973. A cover version by American band The Stories was a hit around June 1973 when Led Zeppelin were touring the States. Check out the chord sequence and tell me Jimmy was not inspired by this. Jimmy's guitar solo has a glam rock inspired feel to it, while the closing moments have a chromatic descending riff of D, C sharp, and C plus B flat. Robert's vocal performance is a bit hoarse and captures him in the middle of still recovering from vocal cord nodule surgery back in November 1973. Page and Plant revisited this track along with Immigrant Song as opening motif on their 1995 and 1996 concert tours. Drop Down Mama was a fitting working title for Custard Pie, as Robert's lyrics were inspired by this old-school blues number, written by American songwriter Sleepy John Estes. The song evolved from a much faster take at Headley Grange back in October 1973 until the decision to slow down the tempo into a blues-funk track was made. Some musical influences for Custard Pie can be found on the following tracks. Custard Pie features many familiar elements from other compositions in graffiti. Trampled Jones played his Hunter D6 clavinet on this song, which was never performed by Led Zeppelin, but 8 times by Page and Plant and 15 times by Robert Plant the solo artist. The great outtake from Physical Graffiti that we Zeppelin fans wish it was officially released. Swan Song is a Jimmy Page acoustic adventure, originally conceived as a 4-piece suite with graffiti sound design all over the track. Using the same guitar tuning as Kashmir, it features an opening segment with Mellotron strings, followed by an acoustic rock portion with John Bonham's big room sounding drums, accentuating the main guitar riff in 5/4. A question remains as to why Robert Plant did not record any vocal sketches for this one. It's safe to think that all the other graffiti numbers were so demanding that there was just not enough time. Also, there's the unplugged number musical style that doesn't really fit the 1974 sessions in terms of concept. Thus, I can see Robert having a hard time coming up with ideas for this. It would have been funny having Swan Song on Led Zeppelin's first Swan Song label release, in the same vein of Bad Company's self-titled song on their self-titled album, right? Small portions of Swan Song's intro were played by Jimmy Page on his White Summer Black Mountain Side solo piece from 1977 all through 1980. Jimmy carried Swan Song into the 80s for the Arms concerts of 1983, next to Paul Rodgers' fantastic vocal approach on the track with a working title of Bird on the Wing. Now this collaboration resulted in the firm's Midnight Moonlight, released on their debut album 2 years later. You can check my post-Led Zeppelin 1980 series on the making of this record. Swan Song also inspired the opening lines from Page & Plant's composition Wonderful One.
Sunshine brings laughter. I need the light, keep me well. Hey baby, love you true. Dream
The most fascinating track on Graffiti and one of Robert Plant's personal favorites, In the Light, started off as a demo with working titles In the Morning, Take Me Home, and Everybody Makes It Through. This Trampled Jones composition had a different introduction with a descending keyboard part before being discarded for a much ethereal approach. With 1973 being a great year for keyboard-oriented songs in the charts, I came up with a list of songs that I believed influenced Trampled Jones to come up with this track, as well as Jimmy's production choices here. In the Light's signature opening features Jimmy Page playing a violin bow on what sounds like an acoustic guitar with alternate tuning and steel strings. There are theories of Page using a hurdy-gurdy like the one we hear on Autumn Lake, you know, the musical bit recorded back in October 1973 for Zeppelin's movie project. Trampled Jones used an EMS VCS3 synthesizer whose pitch bend joystick creates the distinctive phrasing and quite possibly his finest keyboard work in Led Zeppelin. The intro seems to be inspired by the sounds of Shanay, a musical instrument from the Indian regions. Robert's vocals on the intro are double-tracked with his low and high registers mixed together. In the Light is an existential quest for peace and sanity in the midst of a troubling world that feeds from suffering and the burden of expectations. Past a descending riff that I can't help to think of Deep Purple's Space Trucking, we move into a guitar part that feels like the continuation of Led Zeppelin's The Ocean, thus creating a sense of mystery and uncertainty backed up by Jimmy's single-note textures behind. Bonham's drumming follows the same line as 10 Years Gone, with graceful fills and hits that make up for the right balance of tension and release. In the Light was never performed on stage by Led Zeppelin, but Robert Plant sure wanted to try this one out. Technical limitations made it impossible for Jones to provide proper harmonic support for this ambitious song. While Jimmy could have played the opening drone with his violin bow, recreating the synthesizer intro was tricky, to say the least. Maybe they could have gone with a pre-recorded tape like Queen did for Bohemian Rhapsody, or The Who for some of their own stuff. But Zeppelin being Zeppelin, I don't picture Bonham wearing headphones on stage. Robert Plant sang the intro for In the Light on his 1988 tour, and selected post-2000 dates. Jimmy Page performed the song with the Black Crowes on 11 dates from the year 2000. The 16th Annual Grammy Awards were held on March 2nd, 1974, at the Hollywood Palladium in Los Angeles. Led Zeppelin was nominated for Houses of the Holy on the Best Package category, next to Chicago 6, Faces Ooh La La, Cheech and Chong's Los Cochinos, Alice Cooper's $1 Billion Babies, Live, The World of Ike and Tina, and Chubby Checker's Greatest Hits. The Grammy Award went to London Symphony Orchestra's version of Tommy. I'm not sure this album cover was better than Houses of the Holy. Past the recording sessions for Physical Graffiti, there was little activity in the Zeppelin camp for March and April, but not for Peter Grant's second child, Bad Company, who embarked on a promotional tour in anticipation for their May 1974 single for Can't Get Enough, and their album release that same month. The band played a couple of shows in Switzerland to then embark on an 11-date concert run in England. Touring the States would be delayed until July, which brings me to a question I've read on many Zeppelin forums all these years. Why didn't Led Zeppelin tour North America in 1974? Besides Robert's voice needing time to fully heal from surgery, John Paul Jones not wanting to go back to the hectic schedules of the past, and Britain's emerging tax policies forcing many into exile, there was more to it. As they say, follow the money. While progressive rock bands like ELP, Yes, and Genesis did tour North America that year, others like Pink Floyd, Wings, and the Rolling Stones stayed home. The United States was the main market for these bands, and the American economy was not in good shape. 1973 saw the stock market crash in early January as a result of the devaluation of the US dollar, thanks to the Nixon shock that began in August 1971. Things were made worse with the oil crisis situation in October, which led to a recession. Worldwide economies suffered by the ripple effect. The New York Stock Exchange lost 45% of its value, while the UK suffered with percentages as high as 73%. Unemployment rates in the United States jumped from 4.9% in 1973 to 7.2% in 1974. Now let me throw in more data. Inflation in the United States for 1972 was 3.3% and 6.2% in 1973. By 1974, inflation was at 11.1%. Not the best conditions for rock and roll touring at the scale and dimensions Led Zeppelin moved. Ticket prices at Madison Square Garden show $6.50 in 1973 and $7.50 in 1975, meaning the concert industry took a hit at first, trying to come to terms with the post-Nixon economics. By 1977, we see the price at $10.50. Thus, touring schedules grew and venues got bigger. Many conclusions can be drawn out from this, as it explains why rock and roll bands had such productive periods in the early part of the 70s. While money was not the main motivator, it was show business after all. Now, it doesn't mean touring was impossible, but it became a more calculated effort, never mind releasing albums that would sell, which impacted the already stranged or chemically troubled creative process for many famous groups. We can thank Richard Nixon for taking the fun out of rock and roll. While mainstream media focuses on the Watergate scandal, leaving the Bretton Woods system forever changed the game for everyone on this planet. In short, Led Zeppelin's late 1973 and 1974 period away from North American audiences was the best thing for their pockets. But of course, it was a dangerous call for their live show chops that inevitably lost its momentum, with their longest downtime by then of 1 year and 5 months. The average time between tours up to 1973 was 3 months. Their individual musicianship never left. The problem was how each individual member decided to enjoy their leisure time in the world of millionaire rock stars of the 70s. Stay tuned for episode 3 for a deep dive into the making of Swan Song records, the mixing of Physical Graffiti, and many interesting moments from 1974 just before they took the airplane to North America to play Kashmir and very long shows. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.